Michael Carter stood at the edge of his new backyard, surveying the sparkling pool that stretched before him. The late afternoon sun cast a golden hue over the water, its surface perfectly reflecting the neatly trimmed hedges and the endless blue of the sky. For Michael, this pool was more than just a backyard feature. It was his sanctuary and a hard-earned retreat after years of relentless work and personal struggles. In his mind, it symbolized the dream he had nurtured through adversity, a dream that had finally materialized after his divorce 3 years earlier. After dedicating himself to a demanding career as a civil engineer specializing in urban infrastructure, Michael had thrown himself into his work with a single-minded focus. Long hours managing complex projects left little room for personal life, but the sacrifices had paid off. When a long-awaited promotion came through earlier that year, he knew it was time to reward himself. Selling his cramped city apartment, he moved to the suburbs, purchasing a spacious single-story house on a quiet cul-de-sac. The house boasted everything he had ever wanted: a modern kitchen outfitted with stainless steel appliances, a large living room with vaulted ceilings, and most importantly, a backyard featuring a pristine pool that symbolized an oasis of calm where he could escape both work pressures and the lingering solitude of living alone. In Michael's mind, weekends would be filled with quiet moments, relaxing with a good book by the pool or taking a refreshing swim whenever the demands of the day grew too heavy. The neighborhood, on his first visit, had impressed him with its quiet streets lined with immaculate homes. The real estate agent had spoken enthusiastically of the friendly community, sharing stories of block parties, holiday celebrations, and a sense of camaraderie among the residents. Although Michael never intended to become the life of the neighborhood, he valued the idea of living in a place where people respected each other's space, both physically and emotionally, a vital ingredient in rebuilding his life on his own terms. On his very first day in a house, Michael was warmly greeted by his new neighbors. Across the street lived the Mitchells, an elderly couple who waved from their porch as his moving truck pulled up, while to his right, a young couple with a baby offered him freshly baked cookies as a welcoming gift. However, the most memorable introduction came from the family next door, the Harrisons. Bradley Harrison, a tall and broad-shouldered man with a booming voice and an easy smile, welcomed Michael with a firm handshake. His wife, Heather Harrison, exuded a polished friendliness that made her the ideal host for any neighborhood gathering. Their 3 children, twin boys and a younger daughter, hovered nearby as Bradley jovially declared, "Welcome to the neighborhood, man. You've got yourself a great spot here. That pool is going to be a hit. My kids are already jealous." Michael chuckled politely, though he was unsure how to respond to such forward exuberance. While he appreciated the gesture, he also valued his solitude, and he resolved to maintain a polite yet distant relationship with his new acquaintances. In the first few weeks, Michael's life unfolded exactly as he had hoped. Evenings were spent by the pool, with underwater lights casting a soft, tranquil glow, and weekend mornings brought vigorous lap swims followed by restful naps in the patio's shade. For the first time in years, he felt at peace. He also took note of the neighborhood's gentle rhythm. The Mitchells hosted lively Sunday gatherings with their grandchildren. A young couple next door could often be seen jogging together in the early mornings with their baby snug in a stroller, and the Harrisons were the most active of all. Bradley's hearty laughter resonated during his frequent backyard barbecues, and the sound of the twins' impromptu basketball games often drifted over the fence. At first, Michael didn't mind the occasional noise. The Harrisons' energy was confined to their own yard, and, though louder than he preferred, it did not disturb his quiet moments. However, one Saturday afternoon, returning home from a run, Michael encountered an unexpected disruption. A group of teenagers, unfamiliar to him, were splashing around in his pool. Shock and irritation surged through him as he realized that barely a month into his new life, someone had taken it upon themselves to use his property without permission. As he approached the backyard, he noticed the Harrison twins laughing and diving into the water as if it were their own. Clearing his throat loudly, Michael demanded in a calm yet firm tone, "What's going on here?" A boy with curly hair simply shrugged and replied, We were just swimming. Your pool's awesome, by the way. Michael reiterated that it was his private property and that no one had been given permission. The group mumbled apologies and quickly scurried out, leaving Michael with a mixture of frustration and confusion. This incident was an alarming intrusion into a space he had envisioned as his peaceful refuge. That same evening, Michael stopped by the Harrisons' house to address the matter. Bradley greeted him with a beer in hand and a jovial smile, casually dismissing the incident as typical teenage behavior. Teenagers, they don't always think things through. I'll talk to them about it. Don't worry, it won't happen again, Bradley assured him. Michael wanted to believe his neighbor, yet Bradley's nonchalant attitude left him with a nagging sense of unease. He decided to let the conversation pass, hoping that the warning would suffice in preserving his space. In the following weeks, a strange mix of tranquility and tension enveloped Michael's life. Outwardly, the neighborhood maintained its rhythm. The Mitchells continued their weekly family dinners. The joggers kept up their morning routines, and Michael enjoyed his peaceful evenings by the pool after work. Yet, a persistent unease lingered. His personal space did not feel as inviolate as he had hoped. The earlier incident with the teenagers using his pool without permission lingered like a stubborn stain, while Bradley's dismissive response only reinforced Michael's concerns that boundaries were not being taken seriously. That apprehension proved well-founded. One Friday evening, after a particularly grueling week at work, Michael returned home to witness the Harrison twins accompanied by a few friends, once again enjoying his pool as if it were a public park. This time, the group had even brought snacks with brightly colored bags of chips and soda cans scattered about. With unmistakable irritation edging his calm voice, Michael demanded, "What's going on here?" The twins exchanged guilty glances, and one of them, a tall, lanky boy named Ethan, murmured, "We just thought you might not mind since it's so hot." Michael's patience snapped. "I do mind," he replied sharply, gesturing toward the gate. The teenagers scrambled to gather their things, offering half-hearted apologies as they left. Standing by the pool, Michael's frustration mounted. It wasn't merely about misbehaving kids, but about the blatant disregard for his property and privacy. Determined to address the problem more formally, Michael drafted a polite yet direct note reminding the Harrisons that his property was private and that any further intrusions would not be tolerated. The next morning, he discreetly placed the note in their mailbox and returned home, hopeful that his message had finally been understood. For a few days, it appeared to work. The twins stayed away, and the pool remained undisturbed, and Michael began to relax, even considering introducing himself more widely in the neighborhood to foster friendly but respectful connections. But peace was short-lived. On a Saturday afternoon barbecue organized by the Harrisons, Michael's worst fears materialized. After a morning of running errands, he returned home around midday to the unmistakable sound of laughter and music emanating from his backyard. His heart sank as he peered through the gate and saw Bradley, Heather, their kids, and at least a dozen others lounging by the pool, grilling burgers and sipping drinks as if they owned the place. Disbelief gave way to controlled anger as Michael pushed the gate open and stepped into the yard. The revelers froze as they registered his stern presence. Bradley greeted him with a broad smile, completely unperturbed. "Hey, Michael. Hope you don't mind. We thought we'd make the most of this beautiful day. Your pool's too nice not to share." Michael clenched his jaw and responded firmly, "That's not the point. This is my home, my space. You need to leave, all of you." His words rippled through the gathering, and after a brief, awkward silence, Bradley finally relented, assuring him that they would clear out. It took them another 15 minutes to leave, during which Michael stood silently by the gate, arms crossed, making it unmistakably clear that he would not budge until every last guest had gone. As he surveyed the aftermath, a yard littered with empty bottles, damp towels, and half-eaten food, Michael felt a heavy sense of disillusionment. He had moved here for peace and privacy, for a chance to build a life solely his own. Yet, barely a month into his new beginning, he found himself locked in a battle to defend his boundaries against neighbors who seemingly had no concept of personal space. That night, As he sat by the pool and stared into its calm, rippling surface, his sanctuary no longer felt like a haven, but rather a contested battleground, and he couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that the worst was yet to come. In the days that followed, the neighborhood appeared to resume its usual activities. The Mitchells hosted their family dinners, the joggers maintained their routines, and Michael, though still on edge, began to enjoy his evenings by the pool again. However, the memory of the pool intrusions and Bradley's casual dismissal haunted him. Michael had learned from past experiences that subtle signs of boundary violations were often harbingers of more significant conflicts. Resolute in his desire to protect his peace, he maintained a firm stance, hoping that his earlier warnings would suffice. Unfortunately, his hope was short-lived. One breezy Saturday morning, after spending the first half of the day tending to his lawn and pruning the hedges, Michael sat down with a glass of iced tea on his patio to enjoy the fruits of his labor. The comforting sounds of birds chirping and distant lawnmowers filled the air until the familiar sound of splashing shattered the moment. Michael froze as he recognized the noise coming from his pool. Again, the Harrison twins had returned, this time accompanied by even more friends. They had transformed his backyard into an impromptu pool party, complete with loud music blasting from a portable speaker. With his pulse quickening, Michael strode toward the pool. As the teenagers turned to face him, he demanded with unwavering firmness, "What do you think you're doing?" In response, Ethan offered a half-apologetic, half-defensive, "We thought you were cool with it. It's just a pool." Michael's patience had worn dangerously thin. "It's my pool," he declared sharply, "and I have made it very clear that you're not allowed to use it without my permission. Get out now." The group hesitated briefly, muttering under their breath as they gathered their things and left through the side gate. Although he heard Ethan mutter that Michael was such a buzzkill, the comment stung deeply. Once the yard was empty, Michael stood by his pool, now feeling that his sanctuary, a source of pride and solace, had been invaded time and again. It was as if chaos had followed him into the very space he had created to escape it all. Faced with the realization that repeated, uninvited intrusions were not mere coincidences, but deliberate boundary violations, Michael knew he had to take decisive action. Rather than directly confronting the Harrisons, a movie had tried before, he resolved to document every incident meticulously. He began keeping a detailed log, noting dates, times, and specifics of each occurrence. In addition, he discreetly installed a security camera to capture any further transgressions, ensuring that he would have solid evidence if the situation escalated. The next escalation came on a breezy weekend when Michael returned home from the grocery store to find Bradley and a few of his friends lounging by the pool, beers in hand and a portable grill flipping burgers on his patio, as if his property were a public park. The smell of sizzling meat mixed with chlorine created an almost surreal atmosphere. Michael's fists clenched as he approached the group. Bradley greeted him with a disarming grin. "Hey, Michael. Hope you don't mind. We just thought we'd keep the kids entertained while watching the game." Michael's voice, cold and edged with irritation, cut through the merriment. "I do mind. I've told you before, this is my property. You can't just come here whenever you feel like it." Bradley's grin faltered for a brief moment, but still he replied with a dismissive, "Relax, man. We're just neighbors hanging out. No harm, no foul." Michael took a deep breath, forcing himself to stay calm. "This isn't up for debate. You and your friends need to leave now." The tension was palpable as, after nearly half an hour of awkward stalling and hushed conversations among the group, Bradley finally raised his hands and said, all right, we'll clear out. No need to make a scene." When the yard was finally empty, Michael was left alone with the mess, a scattered mix of empty bottles, crumpled napkins, and a lingering smell of smoke. As he cleaned up, a mix of anger and exhaustion settled over him. He could no longer live in constant vigilance, on edge for the next intrusion. Something had to change. That night, lying awake and staring at the ceiling, Michael felt trapped in a battle he had never asked for but could no longer ignore. The persistent intrusions by the Harrisons were not only an annoyance. They were an assault on the life he had painstakingly built. While he considered calling the authorities, he hesitated, aware of the delicate dynamics of being a minority in a predominantly white neighborhood, and the possibility that such a step might escalate the situation further. Instead, Michael resolved to take matters into his own hands, determined to reclaim his space once and for all. Late into one night, an unconventional idea took shape, using the very principles of pool maintenance to his advantage. Recalling his knowledge of superchlorination, a process that temporarily clouds the water to deter swimmers, Michael realized he could create a dramatic, yet harmless, spectacle by adding a calculated dose of chlorine granules and a foaming agent. He could render the pool unusable for several days, sending an unmistakable message without risking any physical harm. Over the next few days, Michael gathered his supplies. He visited a pool supply store on the edge of town, purchasing a bulk container of chlorine granules, a foaming agent often used in themed pool parties, and a testing kit to ensure that the water's chemistry would return to normal afterward. Each step was executed carefully. Michael was determined not to damage the pool he had worked so hard to maintain. In the evenings, he fine-tuned his plan, running small-scale tests in a bucket to confirm that the foam would not harm the pool's surface. By Thursday night, everything was set. Saturday arrived with the sun at its zenith, and as Michael returned home from the grocery store, he was greeted by the all-too-familiar sounds of laughter and music coming from his backyard. This time, however, he was prepared. After parking his car and unloading his groceries, he retrieved his carefully stored supplies from the garage. With a small bucket of chlorine granules in one hand and the foaming agent in the other, Michael approached the pool with his heart pounding in anticipation and determination. As he stepped through the gate, the Harrisons and their guests, Bradley manning a portable grill, Heather passing out drinks, the twins splashing, and pop music blaring from a speaker, were all engrossed in their carefree celebration. No one noticed Michael at first as he walked purposefully toward the pool, setting down his supplies at the water's edge. Finally, Bradley called out in his usual boisterous manner, "Hey, Michael, glad you could join the party. Grab a drink and relax, man." Ignoring the invitation, Michael knelt by the pool and began carefully scooping chlorine granules into the water. Almost immediately, a chemical reaction set in. The water bubbled, churned, and released delicate plumes of steam as the chlorine dissolved. Soon after, he added the foaming agent in a slow, deliberate stream. Within moments, the once clear water transformed into a thick, frothy expanse of white bubbles that spread rapidly, rendering the pool murky and uninviting. A stunned silence fell over the gathering. The upbeat music now seemed oddly out of place against the backdrop of confusion and growing unease. Bradley stepped forward, his expression a mix of curiosity and irritation, and demanded, "What the hell is this?" Michael met his gaze calmly and replied, "Pool maintenance. The water is not safe for swimming right now. You should probably leave." Bradley's jaw tightened. For a moment, it looked as though he might argue. But as he glanced back at his guests, many already gathering their belongings and murmuring about heading home, his confidence waned. Heather gently took Bradley's arm, whispering, "Let's go. We'll talk about this later." One by one, the guests filed out through the side gate until only Bradley, Heather, and their children remained. Bradley lingered for a moment, his eyes narrowing as he stared at Michael. But eventually, with a final frustrated shake of his head, he turned and walked away, followed by his family. After the yard finally fell silent, Michael exhaled deeply, feeling his shoulders relax for the first time that day. Gazing down at the foamy, clouded pool, he allowed himself a faint smile. Although it was not the peaceful oasis he had envisioned when he purchased the house, it was, at least for the moment, undeniably his, a fortress of solitude he had reclaimed through careful planning and decisive action. In the aftermath of his bold move, the following day brought an unusual quiet. The Harrisons' backyard was hushed. There was no boisterous laughter, clinking glasses, or the echo of teenagers bouncing basketballs. It was as if the entire family had retreated indoors to regroup and process what had just transpired. Determined to restore his sanctuary, Michael spent the day meticulously cleaning the pool. The foamy water and chemical imbalance had served their purpose, and now, bucket by bucket, he adjusted the chlorine and pH levels until the water sparkled once more. Each measure felt like reclaiming a piece of his space, and by mid-afternoon, the yard was restored to the serene refuge it had once been. Michael settled into a lounge chair with a glass of iced tea, enjoying the gentle chorus of birds and the reassuring quiet of his neighborhood. For the first time in weeks, his backyard felt unequivocally his own. Yet, as Monday morning arrived with the aroma of fresh coffee and the routine of checking emails, the tension resurfaced when there was a knock at his door. Standing there was Bradley, his posture tense and his usual jovial demeanor replaced by a cold, calculating look. "Morning, Michael," Bradley began evenly. "We need to talk about what you did to the pool." Leaning casually against the doorframe, Michael replied, "What I did to my pool? You mean your stunt that ruined my weekend? Everyone left thinking your pool was some kind of toxic hazard." Bradley's nostrils flared, and with a low, growling voice he retorted, "You didn't have to go that far. We're neighbors. For God's sake, this is supposed to be a community." Michael's tone was measured but resolute. "Respecting someone's property is part of being in a community, Bradley. I've tried talking, I've been patient, but enough is enough." Bradley's anger simmered as he stepped closer, but after a brief moment of tense silence, he conceded, "Fine, you've made your point. Don't expect anyone around here to take your side if you keep pulling stunts like that." Michael's only reply was a quiet shrug. "I'm not looking for sides. I'm looking for peace." With that, Bradley turned and walked away, leaving Michael to reflect on the heavy cost of defending one's personal space. In the weeks that followed, the Harrisons maintained a cautious distance. The twins no longer loitered near Michael's property, and Bradley's booming voice was noticeably absent from the neighborhood. Yet, despite the outward calm, Michael couldn't shake the feeling that the tension was merely a temporary reprieve, a lull before another inevitable storm. Neighbors began to take note. Curious glances were exchanged during Michael's evening walks, and even the Mitchells across the street offered concerned inquiries. "You've been awfully quiet lately, Michael," Mrs. Mitchell remarked one afternoon. Michael smiled politely and replied, "I've just been busy with work. Things are fine." Although he appreciated the support, he was careful not to drag anyone else into his private battle. Then, 2 weeks later, an unexpected knock at the door revealed Heather Harrison standing there, her face a mixture of frustration and apology. "Michael, can we talk?" she asked softly, her urgency unmistakable. Inviting her inside, the two sat at his dining table in a silence that was heavy with unspoken words. Finally, Heather confessed, "I know things have gotten tense between us. I know Bradley can be overwhelming, but this situation is out of hand. The kids don't understand why they can't go swimming anymore, and Bradley feels singled out." Michael took a deep breath and replied, "I'm not singling anyone out. I'm protecting my property. I've tried talking, but my warnings have gone unheeded." Heather nodded, her expression softening. "I get it, and I'll talk to Bradley again. I hope we can move past this. We are neighbors, after all." Although Michael longed for resolution, he couldn't ignore a small, persistent voice warning him that the conflict wasn't completely over. Despite the lingering unease, Michael sensed a subtle shift. The Harrisons' behavior became noticeably more respectful. The twins greeted him politely when they passed by, and on one occasion, Bradley even stopped by with a six-pack of beer as a tentative peace offering. Though their relationship was far from friendly, the animosity that once defined their interactions was gradually replaced by mutual respect. Michael began to believe that the worst might finally be behind him. After a month of cautious reprieve, life in the neighborhood slowly returned to its familiar rhythm. Families chatted over fences, children rode bikes on quiet streets, and weekend barbecues filled the air with the scent of grilled food. Michael found himself relaxing into the suburban life he had once envisioned. Yet, despite the outward calm, he remained guarded, aware that the uneasy peace might only be temporary. One Saturday morning, as Michael sipped his coffee by the pool, he noticed Bradley standing alone in his own backyard, his gaze fixed on the fence that separated their properties. After a brief moment, Bradley approached and cleared his throat, "Hey, Michael, got a minute?" With some hesitation, Michael joined him at the fence. "What's up?" he inquired. Bradley, rubbing the back of his neck and looking unusually sheepish, said, "I just wanted to say maybe we got off on the wrong foot. I know we've been a pain, and I get why you were upset. I didn't realize how much the pool meant to you." Michael studied Bradley's face for any sign of insincerity. To his surprise, the usual cocky grin had softened into a tentative expression of remorse. "I appreciate you saying that," Michael replied. "I've worked hard for this place, and I needed you to understand that." Bradley nodded, adding, "I get it, and I'll make sure the kids know to stay out of your yard from now on. No more uninvited pool parties, I promise." In that moment, a fragile olive branch was extended, and although Michael wasn't yet ready to fully trust Bradley, he recognized this as a positive first step. In the days that followed, subtle changes in the Harrisons' behavior signaled a tentative truce. The twins began greeting Michael with polite nods, and Heather's occasional gestures of goodwill, such as a plate of freshly baked cookies, further eased the tension. Bradley even invited Michael to a small barbecue that the Harrisons were hosting as a gesture of reconciliation. Despite his reservations, Michael accepted the invitation, viewing the event as an opportunity to reset the tone of their interactions and build a sense of community on his own terms. On the day of the barbecue, the weather was perfect, sunny with a gentle breeze. Michael had spent the entire day preparing, cleaning the patio, arranging the furniture, and carefully planning a menu that featured burgers, hot dogs, grilled vegetables, and his mother's famous potato salad. Personally delivering invitations to his neighbors, Michael extended a warm and genuine welcome to everyone, including the Mitchells, the young couple next door, and, with some trepidation, the Harrisons. When Heather opened the door to invite him in, Michael smiled and said, "I'm hosting a barbecue tomorrow afternoon, and I'd like you and your family to come. It's a chance to start fresh." Heather's surprise quickly gave way to a warm smile as she assured him she would speak with Bradley. As the next day unfolded, tables filled with food and a cooler of ice-cold drinks set the stage for an event that blended friendliness with firm, unspoken boundaries. Michael greeted each guest warmly, and even the Harrisons, who initially hesitated, slowly integrated into the gathering. Bradley, carrying a bottle of wine and offering a subdued greeting, admitted, "I didn't think you'd want us here after everything." Michael waved off the comment, replying, "It's water under the bridge, Bradley. Today is about starting fresh." As the afternoon wore on, the atmosphere grew lively. Neighbors shared stories. Laughter mingled with the soft tunes from Michael's speaker, and the twins, now respectful of the pool's boundaries, played contentedly away from the water. When the sun dipped low and the party began to wind down, Michael found himself standing by the grill with Bradley. The two men exchanged few words, letting the event speak for itself. Finally, Bradley broke the silence, his voice low and sincere. "I know I haven't said it enough, but I'm sorry for the way we acted. We didn't respect your space, and that was wrong." Surprised by the genuine tone in Bradley's apology, Michael replied, "I appreciate that, and I'm glad we can move past it. I just hope that from now on, we can keep things respectful." Bradley nodded earnestly, and although true friendship was still distant, the tentative bond of mutual respect had begun to form. As the weeks turned into months, the neighborhood slowly returned to normal. Families resumed their routines, and Michael's once contested pool became his personal haven once again, a place where he could swim laps under the stars or simply sit and reflect on how far he had come. The transformation in his relationship with the Harrisons was subtle yet significant. Bradley kept his word, and Michael experienced no further intrusions on his property. Neighbors now greeted him warmly during his evening walks, and the Mitchells even waved him over for a chat. Though Michael was careful to balance social interactions with the solitude he cherished, he couldn't help but feel that his journey had taught him the invaluable lesson of standing up for his space. One Saturday morning, while savoring his coffee by the pool, Michael observed the Harrison twins playing basketball in their driveway. Their laughter now blended softly into the background, becoming part of the suburban harmony he had once longed for. A small smile tugged at his lips as he returned their friendly wave, a simple interaction that symbolized progress and the gradual mending of old wounds. Late one afternoon, Michael discovered a handwritten note left on his doorstep. It was from Bradley, inviting him to a small barbecue the Harrisons were hosting that weekend. Though the memories of past conflicts flashed through Michael's mind, he recognized this as a final opportunity to close the chapter on their rocky beginning and truly move forward. On the day of the event, Michael arrived with a bottle of wine in hand. Bradley greeted him at the door with a tempered warmth that was new and genuine. The gathering was quiet and intimate, a far cry from the chaotic pool parties of the past, and Michael found himself enjoying the easy camaraderie that emerged. As the evening drew to a close, and after sharing a few heartfelt words by the grill, Michael walked back to his house with the gentle glow of the moonlight reflecting off his restored pool, a pool that now symbolized not only his sanctuary, but also his resilience. Reflecting on his journey, Michael realized that the battles he had fought for his personal space were more than mere disputes. They were a testament to his determination to create a life that was truly his own. The challenges had reshaped his relationships and taught him the importance of clear boundaries. Now, as he stood by his pool, the quiet hum of the neighborhood around him and the soft reflections on the water, Michael felt a deep sense of accomplishment. His home was no longer just a place to live. It was his sanctuary, his retreat, a space where he could finally call his own. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more great stories like this one. Share this video with your friends and family, and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Stay tuned for our next video, and check out others you might have missed. See you next time.